Look, staying healthy isn't easy. Watching your diet, hitting the gym, avoiding stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is the only bed that effortlessly adjusts and responds to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. And now, the new Queen Sleep Number 360 P5 Smart Bed is only $17.99. Save $600. Only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
I think the thing about grief is that it seeps into everything, so you don't know what's grief and what isn't. I didn't know if it's just how I was. I remember at the very beginning just having this overwhelming sense of never being able to get out of it and being worried that I would always be that way, and that was it. I was never going to be happy again. I couldn't remember what it felt like. I think particularly at the beginning, I felt so raw. And it was like all my organs had just been like flipped inside out and everything was on show, and as anything and everyone could poke at me, and I was just so wounded.
My name is Halina Rafai and this is the A Sonic Hug podcast. Over the coming months and episodes, you will hear the voices of people from different walks of life who deal, experience and battle mental health issues. Over a year ago, I sat down with Jassy to talk about grief and the impact on her mental health. I know she has since arrived in a different place again, but this is an incredible articulation of what she has gone through in a portion of her life. It also highlights how vital it is to talk. This is Jassy's story.
My name is Jassy Earl. I'm 26. I feel like that might be quite important to what I say, maybe. I am a photographer and a filmmaker and a performance maker. So my experience of grief, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about was there a particular opening up of grief and what I understand grief to be? And I think in a really obvious sense, yes. And that's when I lost my dad. So I lost my dad 2.5 years ago, and he was ill for all of my life. So I always knew that he was going to die, but I don't think it prepared me in any way for him dying. But then there were lots of things that led up to that, which I think have made me realise that I was probably grieving for a really long time. And often it's the case that if you have a family member who has a terminal illness or some sort of degenerative illness, that you're often grieving before they go, but maybe not in ways that you realise. So I was on Lismore with some friends when he died, and it was New Year. And actually the moment I found out, I went outside and I howled like an animal, and I've never ever made that noise ever again. And I didn't even know where it came from. It was some inner animal thing that came out. But I just walked into the darkness for maybe like an hour and a half. And in the days after, I would just run across the island in a straight line. It didn't matter where I was going. And I think it varies person to person, but I wanted to move. I always wanted to be moving somewhere, and I found sitting down and being still really, really tricky. I couldn't read a book. I couldn't watch a film. I found it really hard to be still because I thought I was wasting time. Because the fear of death becomes really present, of like, why am I wasting time? I need to do things. And that evens out and becomes easier. My relationship with grief was definitely instigated by my dad dying. But at the same time, it was accumulative. It wasn't just about him dying. I really remember when I was little, he had kidney disease, and when he was 40, he went into hospital. So I was 7. I do have memories of him before then, but this is my first kind of big memory of him. And we were in hospital, and it was his 40th birthday, and I bought him this Eeyore balloon, and I handed it to him, and then we were all rushed out of the room. And I didn't realise at the time because I was a child, but it turned out that he went into cardiac arrest at that point. And my sister was crying and I was saying, oh, what's up with you? You're such a drama queen, shut up. And I was a total daddy's girl. So I was very much in awe of my dad and totally thought that he was the be all and end all and completely untouchable in lots of ways. That's kind of the first time that I knew that something was really wrong. Yeah, my relationship to him was kind of always in relationship to his illness, but also his sadness. And the older I got, the more I realised that, yeah, he was sad because of his fall from grace in lots of ways, because of his illness. And he had renal failure / kidney disease, and they think that he had that from when he was a teenager. But he was born in the 50s, so he wouldn't have known that, and it wasn't the case that you would go to the GP and check out what was going on. But also it was exacerbated by his alcoholism. So my dad was an alcoholic, and in turn, because of that and because he had to become teetotal, he was chronically depressed. So I'm saying all this because I think when I think about my grief, it's not just the fact that he's died, but it's all the things that I am because of him. And it's massively tied into this whole toxic masculinity, alpha male thing that I grew up with. And he was the head of the family and he could never accept the fact that he was ill. And he would always use it in quite a curious way. And he hid a lot from us. We never really knew how ill he was. Yeah, so there were lots of silences around his illness. But at the same time, he would also talk about death really openly. So it was really weird when he did die because he spoke about it all the time. We always knew he was going to die, but it was never spoken about in a way that was meaningful. It was very off the cuff and shrouded in humour, or there was never actual logistical conversations or what would happen when he died or any of those things. And I also think that his life was tied up with grief. I lost my grandparents when I was 14 and he was an only child and he lost them in very quick succession within the same month. And I don't think he ever got over that. I don't think he ever dealt with a lot of the guilt that he had around losing his parents and being an only child. And that impacted our lives in a huge way. So me and my mum and my dad moved to Cumbria. I grew up in Northampton in the Midlands and I've got 2 elder sisters. And because of our grandparents dying, me and my mum and dad relocated to Cumbria. And I now see that that was because my dad couldn't handle the fact that his parents were gone and he couldn't deal with the memories that lived in that town. And I sensed that he saw them everywhere and he just couldn't handle it. So it was easier to just run away and not talk about it. I don't think we ever had a conversation about it. It was very swept under the carpet. And actually, interestingly, the only time I ever saw my dad cry was when his mum died. He really, really loved her. I don't think he ever got over that because he just wasn't able to talk about it at all. Yeah, and consequently, I think that impacted the rest of his life. I think the thing about grief is that it seeps into everything, so you don't know what's grief and what isn't. I didn't know if it's just how I was. I remember at the very beginning just having this overwhelming sense of never being able to get out of it and being worried that I would always be that way and that was it. I was never going to be happy again. I couldn't remember what it felt like. I think particularly at the beginning, I felt so raw and it was like all my organs had just been flipped inside out and everything was on show and as anything and everyone could poke at me and I was just so wounded. As time went on, I realised that it was going to go on for a long time. So for the first 6 months, I don't really remember a lot of what I did in the first 6 months. I think I was in so much pain that I just tried everything to make it better. And nothing does make it better. You're just buying time. As time went on, I think for the first year or so, I remember people saying that you just need to get through the first year and survive that. And then you can think about what it is to heal and repair. And obviously everyone's journey through that is a lot different. But Yeah, it wasn't until last summer, maybe, that I realised that my anger was really out of control. I think my anger was the most difficult thing to deal with and for other people to deal with. Yeah, a lot of my friends' patience around my anger was really tried. And it's really hard for the people that you're around. And I think particularly being young, like my support system is my friends. And I was 23 when he died. So 23, 24 when he died. And everyone's kind of still doing the young things and going out and partying every night. And there's only so much time that I think can be given to you to grieve. In the first year, I wanted to move around a lot. And I thought if I moved, it would go. And if I moved somewhere else, it would go. And I went on lots of holidays and just kept moving because I thought it would like dislodge itself, or I could leave it in a place and it wouldn't follow me. And of course it does follow you. You can't shake it off. And I don't think this was a moment that caused me to realise it, but I have this really vivid memory of moving into my current flat. And I'd been away for a bit and I came back and I thought this would be the fresh start that I needed. And my dad hadn't been in that place. And yeah, I could start again. But actually I found it really hard because it was a new chapter and another part of my life that my dad wouldn't see. Like he'd then not been in that house. And the more difficult part is the further away you get from them, the more of your life that they've missed out on. But I got really angry because of that. And I really remember just losing my shit in the flat and I just couldn't handle being there. And I really lost it and was shouting and was really angry. And Daisy was there. Daisy is my flatmate and she held a lot of that. And I look back now and I'm amazed that she stayed alongside me whilst I was saying some of the stuff that I was saying. And it was never directed at her. It was directed at the flat and my life and just having all these feelings that were still there and being really angry at that and really, really pissed off that I was in the position that I was in and had all these feelings at the age that I did whilst everyone else was carrying on with their lives. I locked myself in the bathroom for like 5 hours or something. I just couldn't handle how much my life had changed. I was grieving my dad and the fact that he wasn't there, but also myself. I feel like a lot of my early 20s, I feel like I skipped a few years. And now I feel a lot older than I am because I had to process so many things that I didn't expect to. I became a different person and that was really hard to accept. But at the same time, really positive. But I think it's the rate at which that happens. And I'd split up with my boyfriend shortly before my dad died. And it just felt like the version I had of my life and the things that I believed in and the people who were in it all just disappeared. And particularly the men in my life. And I think those two things coincided. And a lot of the time, I didn't know if I was grieving the loss of my relationship or my dad dying. Like the two overlapped and I couldn't find which thread was which. They just totally seeped into each other. Grief is not productive and it's not linear. And I know both of those things are quite obvious things to say, but we just want to be better and we want to feel better. And it's really hard to feel like shit. It's really hard to sit with it. I think there's a tendency to make sense out of everything and unpick everything. And whilst that's helpful, the tendency to make things better or to try and fix things is often completely pointless and you do more harm than good. And it took me a long time to realise that. There's a tendency for other people to want to fix it and make it better, and you can't do that. It's not possible. Like I started to know that it was never going to be better. That's it. My life's changed and I just have to deal with that new life. So yeah, it was really, really hard to find out how I was feeling or what I was feeling at any given point because all of these griefs intersect. Like a lot of the anger that I was experiencing was because of what I'd been taught as a child by my dad. And having all those realizations of particularly, and I guess this is maybe something of just growing up anyway and knowing what you are in relation to what your parents have given you. I think probably it was just coincidence that those things came together. But it's hard knowing that there are things that you've been given that you didn't ask to be given. And it's even more frustrating when that person is dead and you can't talk to them about it. I really struggled with that. But the thing that did help me pick apart all of those things was therapy and my therapist. And yeah, I can't sing my therapist's praises enough. And I think it's really, really, really important to speak to someone. And yeah, I was really encouraged by my friends to do that. And I think it was absolutely the right thing to do that, to unpick all those things. You can't do it yourself. I don't think it's possible. There's too much, and we're our own worst enemies. So yeah, there was no way of me kind of deciphering what was what and why I was feeling that way, because so much of it was linked to my past and my childhood and grief and the splitting up in my relationship and how I've taught myself or been taught to be in relation to men. Losing your dad is a big thing. It's a really big thing. And I think losing your parents in general is a really big thing, of this huge safety net that you think you have, and they're never going to die. And even if you know they are, it's still a concept. And when it actually happens, it's like, oh, shit, I'm on my own now. And me and my sister have spoken about this, of it just changes your the whole family dynamic as well. And my mum is so deep in her grief still. And yeah, that's quite tricky because it changes your mum. So in lots of ways, neither of your parents are there in the same way. You don't have that security blanket anymore, and all the roles kind of reverse. And there was a lot of expectation placed on me and my sister. So yeah, you kind of aren't allowed to be the child that you were anymore. So I had a relationship with speaking about my feelings, but hadn't really embraced it fully before. And that's also interesting. So my parents never spoke about their feelings. We weren't an open family. We never spoke about anything. And I didn't speak about anything with my boyfriend. And it was always very hard feeling and very shut down. And as soon as my dad died, that was out the window. Like, I became very open, and that was really positive, because the only way to get it out was talk about it and keep talking. And yeah, so in lots of ways, actually, I think my dad dying was kind of the best thing that could have happened. And as horrible as it is to say that, he was a tricky man, and he had a really negative impact on me. And I still love him, and he's still my dad, but I think there's a tendency to romanticize people that have died and him become some sort of hero. And he wasn't. He was a dickhead, and he was really hard to be around. And I think he was very sad and very misunderstood, and he gave me and my sisters a lot of that. But it doesn't mean that you don't grieve that person, even if you had a complicated relationship to them. Like, he was my dad. I still grew up with him. He still gave me lots of things. So I did speak to a therapist from November, and that was totally my choice. And then last summer, yeah, when my anger kind of got out of whack, and I just realized how much of an impact I was having on everyone around me, of this anger, of just being a total tool. Like, I was horrible to people because I was just so angry that everyone else was okay and I wasn't, and kind of a martyr about it, of like not feeling like I was understood. I was very self-sabotagey and just wanted to hit out and wanted to put it on someone else or try and put the fault somewhere, but it was no one's. So the biggest thing that I've done in terms of, I think, things coming together as well as time, was making the choice to go and see a doctor and ask for antidepressants. And it took me a really, really long time to come to terms with that. I really didn't want to do that. I think there's still, I don't know, I felt like there was a lot of stigma or that I wasn't grieving. I was worried that I would be stifling my grief, or I wasn't feeling it properly, and that really, really being in pain was how I get better. But I think when it got to like 18 months, I was just sick of it. I just couldn't do it anymore. I just couldn't be in that much pain all the time and struggle that much every single day. And so, yeah, it's then when it's hard to draw the line between, am I grieving or am I depressed? I didn't know at all. But I think, yeah, I was depressed, but it had been born out of grief and everything that I'd been given. And of course, I was struggling because it was kind of a lifetime of grief that I'd never addressed. And I think about this a lot because I didn't grieve my grandparents, and I think maybe it's a tendency to just not give yourself permission to grieve, and it's just not encouraged. And I grieved. I think I have really grieved, and I'm hoping that will do me good in the long run. I still carry it 100%, but I know it's getting better, and it has got significantly better. And I still miss him, and there are days when it's like your mind has played a trick on you and you're still as gutted as you were at the start. Like often I dream of him and I'll wake up and just feel like I've just learned that he's died. Yeah, I think I will always carry it. It will always be in me, and I can feel it in my body. Absolutely. It's like a little ball that I carry around in my stomach. I went to a symposium about death recently, and I was talking to someone and they were talking about grief as a core and a circular core that sits in the middle of everything. And it's just that your life grows around it. So your life becomes bigger in relation to the core, but it doesn't disappear. And I don't think it will ever disappear. I see him everywhere. I see him in my mum. I see him in my sister. And I hear him in lots of things that I say. And I guess that presence will become less and less over time. Of course it will. And my memory of him in a physical sense is always fading. And that's really hard to deal with. And there's lots of my life he will never see because of how young I was when he died. But yeah, I'm definitely more at peace with it now. And I think talking about it and making friends through it has been the most positive thing that could have come out of it. And I can talk about my feelings in a fuller sense than I ever could have. So that's how I've come to terms with it and grown to accept it. And there's still a lot of work to be done, I think. Absolutely. It just gets easier. I'm really glad of my sadness. I think we should all just learn to embrace it more. I think it just makes you a deeper, more fuller human being. And it's all processing, like feeling sad and feeling vulnerable is part of it. Well, in relation to being depressed and grieving, I think in terms of me being able to process what's happening, if I cry now, I'm not crying for like 2 days. I can just cry for a normal amount of time, get it out. In the same way that you would laugh for a really long time because you're full of joy, just get it out, get it done with, and move on with the rest of my day. I'm not like absolutely debilitated by it. So yeah, I embrace it. I don't turn away from it. I'll just sit and have a cry every now and then. I like listening to my dad's records. I find that really comforting. We shared a lot in music, and we would often sit in silence and just listen to music because that was easier than talking. I think particularly when I was a teenager, he got what was going on, but we just never spoke about it. I'll walk, I'll go outside. I think the outdoors has been the biggest saviour for me. I will always just go walking into the mountains. And yeah, maybe it's a bit of a cliche thing that you find the outdoors when you're in times of pain, but I think that makes sense. Like, we're humans, of course we should be out seeing things that are bigger than us, seeing the sea and the mountains, and that we're in relation to all of that. Like, we're humans, we're born and we die. Of course we do. Seeing my dog getting old, I think is very humbling. Yeah, and just forces you to face your own mortality. I think anything that does that makes it easier. And being vulnerable really strengthens the relationships with other people around you. Like, I've learned to try not to hide that away and just sit with it and be that and not be embarrassed. But things that help me through, yeah, yoga, anything that sits me in my body and gets me away from my mind definitely helps. Running, yeah, just running without any kind of direction, I really enjoy doing. I really just wanted to move more, and actually it propelled me into like being fitter and thinking about my body more and being in it and trying to be present and all of those things. Just trying to find something that works. But I think adrenaline is so helpful, because even if I didn't do anything in my day, if I went for a run and did some yoga, that's grand. That's cool. I've done something. I wish as a society we just spoke about death more. I think that would have made it so much easier for everyone involved. Not just me, but I just felt so alienated by my friends, and that I was a burden, and that I was this death girl now, this death grief girl. And whether that was true or not, like, it felt like a problem, and that death and dying and grief is a problem, and that I should get over it and be doing it quicker, or any of those things. I just wish we had a better relationship to death being a total normal thing. And I don't know what the answer to that is. And I'm hoping that because just generally we're getting better at talking about stigmatized things and mental health and all of these things, being able to see death as something that is inevitable and not macabre or depressing, but just something that happens. If my family were able to speak about it more, it would have paved the way for it being easier and us all being able to be more supportive to each other. And the people around me who have accompanied me through it have now said that they feel more able to offer advice to other people who have lost someone and are grieving. And I think it's just a sharing of that humanity and not ostracizing or alienating people, often unintentionally. I think we just don't know what to do, because ultimately there is nothing that you can do. It's just bearing witness to that happening. That is the most helpful thing, of not ignoring it or avoiding it or overcomplicating it or cushioning it or just trying to do something about it. It can't be fixed. I saw a book in a bookshop once that was talking about this idea of everything being too much and not enough at the same time. And your own worst enemy, and nothing was good enough. Nothing would make it better. But just a generosity and a patience. What someone's going through might take a really long time, and that's okay. And really basic things like food and eating and not talking about it actually is really helpful. And just listening to what I needed in that moment. Sometimes I did want to talk about it. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I wanted to make really crude jokes about it. Sometimes I just wanted to cry behind a door. Like, it would change all the time. And I was like a tantrumy child most of the time. But the most helpful things were being allowed to be a person that enjoyed doing things and reminded of the joy of doing that. Because at the same time, especially in the first 6 months, I experienced some of the highest highs because I was so manic and so sad that actually with the moments where I was happy or there was some glimpse of happiness, it was so beautiful because the possibility of that happening again was euphoric. So going away and going on road trips and listening to music all the time, just being a 23, 24-year-old was the most helpful thing at that time, and having friends. But at the same time, being alone, like everything is not, there was a flip side to everything. Just feeling heard and listened to and witnessed. Yeah.
Remember more, improve your focus, and multitask better. Hum is a brain sharpener that helps you do all three. Hum's wearable boosts your working memory and will be available in late 2021. Sign up to be notified when Hum launches and to learn more about the science behind Hum at thinkhum.com. That's thinkhum.com. Hum is designed for healthy adults and should not be used if you're pregnant, have cognitive impairment, implanted devices, or a history of seizures. The Hum patch is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. To learn more, go to thinkhum.com.
Look, staying healthy isn't easy. Watching your diet, hitting the gym, avoiding stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is the only bed that effortlessly adjusts and responds to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. And now, the new Queen Sleep Number 360 P5 Smart Bed is only $17.99. Save $600. Only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
That was Jassy's story. I've known Jassy for a few years now. Her artistic work is absolutely incredible, and the way that she now uses grief within aspects of her creativity has been praised widely. This is the first time a woman has spoken on these podcasts about being affected by toxic masculinity, which I found profound. There's a stereotype that women are more empathetic and open, but Jassy talks about how her father's inability to show emotion and talk openly about things and how this is passed on to her. And, as she mentions throughout, this may have been a contributing factor to her experience with grief. Out of the 4 podcasts so far covering subject of grief, no 2 have been the same, and I expect that if I speak to others, each will be unique. They do, however, all pull on similar themes, the obvious enormity of the pain, but the way that they have each spoken about time, how the grief will never truly disappear and how you have to live with it. The other themes of trying to pick things apart, make sense of what's happening, the immediate need to try and do as many things as you can to cram in as much as is humanly possible in the months following the physical death of someone. Jassy is also the first person to express anger. Her anger at the situation, at why she was having to experience this at such a young age, and while people were, as she put it, carrying on with stuff, the number of years she has had flooded with these experiences, the continuous grief of her dad's illness, his alcoholism, her relationship breakdown, her father's death and her mother's ongoing grief. I have not felt the anger that Jassy has through grief due to the physical death of someone, but I recognise that anger that she speaks of, which comes up with this level of shit that you just have to put up with, and as she says, being given things you didn't ask for. It's an anger so deep that it becomes a constant in the room. The blinding rage is a filter to which you look at everything through, and it makes it unbearable for others, but not as unbearable as it is for yourself. 2 of the many poignant moments for me are when Jassy talks about how her grief continues when new things begin because her father won't get to experience them or see her journey. And then when she talks about your parents dying being a concept, and when they finally passed, the sheer enormity of those feelings of being alone are almost incomprehensible. I think almost all of us that have parents, no matter what age we are, all think about this at some point. There's a safety net beneath us, as I suppose our parents will always subconsciously visualise us as small children, and us seeing them as towering figures still holding our hands. The fear of that net breaking and us cut loose places those mass feelings of uncertainty, anxiousness and loss of confidence. Jassy has broken the chain here. The constant in all of these podcasts continues to be generational teachings and learnings. Her experience with therapy is so positive and once again shows that we must as a society have access to this no matter who we are and with no privilege taken into consideration. She speaks numerous times about how much talking has helped her. The professional help of someone aiding her to try and make sense of her feelings but also her friends. If you see someone struggling and you want to help them, they perhaps don't want help or you don't know how to help them. Guiding them to professional help is your way of doing this, whether that be a GP in the first instance. Jassy makes one of the most notable points I've heard in some time. She says that death is often felt like a problem when it isn't at all. It is ironically part of our lives. It's a constant whether we like it or not, but our fear that surrounds it further adds to that stigma. She also speaks about how her grief felt like a burden and this came through as if she had to have a time limit on getting through it. This is applicable to mental health, and it feels as if we have something that we try to speak about, then sometimes it's met with people asking us to move on or to try and put it behind us. We shouldn't have to do that. We should be able to talk about it, experience it, and live what we want to for as long as we need to, and that's why groups, communities, and indeed professional help is vital. We need to try to stop avoiding what we perhaps sometimes fear the most. I'm not going to lie, whilst editing this podcast I had to take several breaks. I just wanted to find Jassy and hug her. I wanted to hug her to acknowledge her sadness, but also to say thank you for articulating this all in a way that gave me a lot to think about and comfort in terms of the complex relationship I have with my own father. She is such a vibrant and intelligent human. She symbolises what we often talk about, that through extreme pain and hard times comes resilience and inspiration. I am hugging you now, Jassy, if you're listening to this. And when you say we need to see things bigger than us, you have delivered something monumental here. If you have experienced or experiencing anything described in this episode, you will find support information in the text with this podcast. A Sonic Hug podcast is recorded, produced and edited by me, Halina Rafai. We are also part of Scotland's podcasting network, The Big Light. Until next time, deep breaths.
Look, staying healthy isn't easy. Watching your diet, hitting the gym, avoiding stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is the only bed that effortlessly adjusts and responds to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. And now, the new Queen Sleep Number 360 P5 Smart Bed is only $17.99. Save $600. Only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.